My dad refused to walk me down the aisle because his 29-year-old wife hated my fiancé, then showed up drunk, so I did this at their anniversary party, then kicked him out of my house. Throwaway for obvious reasons because I know my friends use Reddit. I'm female, 32, and engaged to the most wonderful guy, Trevor, male, 35, and we're supposed to get married in exactly a week. We've been together for 3 years, and I honestly never thought I'd be in this situation. Sorry in advance for the wall of text, but I'm just so upset and confused right now. Some background. My parents got divorced when I was 14, but it was pretty friendly, and I stayed close with both of them afterwards. My dad, Arthur, male, 58, was single for years after the divorce. He went on a few dates, but nothing serious, and I know he was really lonely. I actually was the one who convinced him to go to this fundraiser at the local arts center about 2 years ago because I thought it would be good for him to get out more. That's where he met Natalie, female, 29. Yeah, I know the age gap is a lot. She's only 3 years older than me, which is kind of weird to be honest. But my dad seemed so happy for the first time in forever, so I was happy for him. They had this crazy whirlwind romance and got married after only 6 months, which was super out of character for my dad. He's always been really careful about big decisions, like when he bought his car, he researched for literally 8 months before deciding. So this was shocking. I really tried to welcome Natalie into the family. I invited them over for weekly dinners at our place. I even helped her find a good hairstylist and showed her all the best places to shop. We used to do these dinners every Thursday, but they stopped about 6 months ago. Oh, I should probably mention what we do. I'm an architect at one of the bigger firms in the city, and Trevor is a high school history teacher. He's amazing at what he does, and his students love him. But yeah, teachers don't make great money in our state, which becomes important. I've been obsessed with architecture since I was a kid. I've been collecting rare architecture books since college. My most prized possession is this first edition that my dad got me for my 25th birthday. He saved up for months to buy it because he knew how much it meant to me. That's the kind of relationship we had, which makes all this so much harder. The problem started when Natalie first met Trevor at a family dinner about a year ago. From the second they were introduced, she was just cold. She barely acknowledged him when he tried to talk to her, made almost zero eye contact, and just seemed really dismissive. I figured maybe she was just shy around new people. But Trevor mentioned later that it felt more like she actively disliked him for some reason. After that, she started making these little comments about Trevor's job. She'd ask things like, "Don't teachers make like no money?" Or "How will you guys ever afford a house on that salary?" while giving me these pointed looks. One time she said, "Joy must be the breadwinner in that relationship," and did this weird little laugh. Yes, I make more than Trevor. We've always been totally fine with that, and we've talked about our finances openly. We're planning to buy a house together and share expenses based on what we each make. Trevor has never once made me feel like he's with me for my money or anything like that. He's the most supportive partner I could ask for. Everything got worse 2 weeks ago. I was sitting at our kitchen table going over the wedding seating charts when my dad called. I could tell something was wrong right away because he kept clearing his throat and sounded really uncomfortable. My dad told me he couldn't walk me down the aisle. When I asked why, thinking he was joking, he said he couldn't support my marriage. He said Trevor wasn't the right match for me, and mentioned concerns about his ambition and financial stability. He said I deserved someone who could be an equal partner. I immediately recognized those phrases because they were exactly what Natalie had been saying. When I asked if this was coming from Natalie, my dad paused for a long time before saying she'd made some good points he hadn't considered. I told him I loved Trevor and don't care that I make more money than him. He just said someday I'd thank him for being honest. I hung up on him. I was crying so hard I couldn't even see straight. Trevor found me like an hour later, still sitting at the table with all the seating cards scattered everywhere. We got into a huge argument a few days later, where my dad basically admitted that Natalie thinks Trevor is only with me for my money and my connections in the architecture world, which is ridiculous. Trevor loves teaching and has never once expressed interest in changing careers. The worst part is that my dad and Natalie have been living in a house I inherited from my grandmother for the past 1.5 years. It was supposed to be temporary while they looked for a place after my dad sold his house, but they're still there paying barely any rent while claiming they're still looking for the right property. I feel like such an idiot now for letting them stay there for so long. My grandma was the best. She taught me how to make pierogies from scratch when I was little, and I still make them every Christmas. I don't even know what to do anymore. I've decided to have my uncle, my mom's brother, walk me down the aisle instead. He's always been there for me and actually likes Trevor, but I'm torn about whether to uninvite my dad completely. The wedding is literally next weekend, and I keep going back and forth. On one hand, he's still my dad, and I've always imagined him being there on my wedding day. On the other hand, how can I look at him knowing he thinks my relationship is a mistake? Oh, and my cat Pickles somehow got hold of the first wedding invitation sample and shredded it to pieces. Should have taken that as a sign, lol. I honestly don't care what people think about my relationship with Trevor. We're happy, and that's what matters. But it still hurts so much that my dad would choose his new wife's opinion over his own daughter's happiness. Am I overreacting by considering uninviting him? I just don't know what to do, and the wedding is so soon. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up. Thanks everyone for the support. To clarify, since a few people asked, yes, I own the house they're living in outright. My grandma left it to me specifically in her will. I've been letting them stay there for $800 a month, which is way below market rate for a 3B, 2BA in our area. I honestly wasn't even thinking about the money until all this happened. Some people are asking about my mom. She and my dad are civil, but not close. She's been super supportive about Trevor from day one and is helping with a lot of the wedding planning. She actually warned me that Natalie seemed off when they met at Christmas, but I brushed it off. For those asking what Trevor thinks, he says he understands if I want my dad there and won't be offended, but I can tell he's really hurt by what my dad said. Trevor lost his own dad when he was in college, so I think this whole father-daughter thing means a lot to him too. Now for the first update. So, a lot has happened since my last post, and I don't even know where to start. First of all, thank you to everyone who commented with advice and support. So the wedding happened last weekend. After going back and forth about 1,000,000 times, I decided to invite my dad, but I took him out of the ceremony program and had my uncle walk me down the aisle instead. My uncle is my mom's brother, and he's always been there for me. He actually taught me how to drive when I was 16 because my dad was too nervous, lol. Oh, and my uncle wore my grandfather's pocket watch that day, which was this whole thing because that watch was supposed to go to my dad after my grandpa died, but my dad forgot it at home the day of the funeral. And now looking back, it seems weird or whatever. Anyway, the ceremony itself was beautiful. Trevor looked so handsome in his suit, and I somehow managed not to ugly cry during the vows. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel my dad's absence during the ceremony. Like, I made the right choice having my uncle walk me down the aisle, but there was still this weird, hollow feeling in my chest the whole time. But whatever, I tried to focus on the positive stuff. So my dad did show up to the reception, but he was like 45 minutes late and visibly drunk, which is completely out of character for him. My dad is the guy who has like one glass of wine with dinner, and that's it. Natalie was conveniently absent because she apparently couldn't support our marriage and had some previous commitment she just couldn't reschedule. Yeah, right. I tried to just ignore the fact that my dad was drunk. I figured he'd just sit at his table with my distant cousins and maybe leave early. Boy, was I wrong. At first, he just sat there quietly, but as the night went on and he kept drinking, the waitstaff should have cut him off, but I guess they didn't notice how bad he was getting. He started getting really agitated. So me and my uncle did our dance to What a Wonderful World, which was my grandpa's favorite song, and everything was going fine. But then as soon as the song ended, I noticed my dad standing at the edge of the dance floor looking all unsteady. He started saying really loud that he should be the one dancing with me. My uncle tried to guide him back to his seat, but my dad shoved past him, saying that I was his daughter. The DJ tried to smooth things over by starting another song, but by then everyone was getting uncomfortable. Then my dad walks right up to Trevor and starts pointing his finger in his face. Trevor tried to defuse the situation with a smile. He's seriously the most patient person ever. But then my dad announces super loud that Trevor isn't worthy of me. Trevor's brother Kyle stepped between them trying to calm things down. And then my dad tried to grab the microphone from the DJ booth. Kyle blocked him, and then my dad shoved him. He almost knocked Kyle over. My brother Cody and two of my cousins had to literally drag my dad outside while he yelled about being disrespected in front of everyone. I just stood there frozen on the dance floor. I was mortified, like I couldn't even move. Trevor came over and put his arm around me and whispered something about how it would be okay. But honestly, the whole night was kind of ruined after that. We tried to salvage the reception, but the mood was just off. People were being extra nice to me, which somehow made it worse. Like I could tell everyone was pitying me. We left for our honeymoon in Puerto Rico the next day, and I was determined to put the wedding disaster behind me. But the whole time we were getting texts from family about how my dad was bad-mouthing Trevor to literally anyone who would listen. Extended family, friends, probably random people at the grocery store for all I know. He was telling people Trevor had manipulated me somehow. And yes, before anyone asks, we did consider postponing the honeymoon, but we'd already paid for everything, and it was non-refundable, so we figured we should at least try to enjoy it. Anyway, I kept saying I was putting the whole wedding thing behind me, but honestly, I was checking my dad's social media like 20 times a day and writing these long, angry texts that I never sent. Trevor caught me drafting one at like 3 a.m. one night and gently suggested maybe I should talk to someone professional about all this, which I probably should. We actually cut our trip short after I got this horrible sunburn that required medical attention. Pro tip, don't fall asleep on the beach for 3 hours even if you're wearing sunscreen. But looking back, I think part of me wanted an excuse to get home and deal with the situation with my dad. When we got back, my childhood friend Michelle came over to see wedding photos and drop off a late gift, and that's when she told me something that made everything make sense. Apparently, 5 years ago, Natalie had dated Trevor, like actually dated him. Michelle knew them both from this recreational volleyball league they all played in. According to Michelle, Trevor ended things after he found out Natalie was seeing multiple guys at the same time. I was shocked. Natalie had never mentioned this to anyone. Not me, not my dad, nobody. And based on how my dad acted at the wedding, I'm 100% sure he has no idea about this either. At first I thought maybe Natalie was just embarrassed about her past or whatever. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized she's been holding this grudge toward Trevor this whole time. All those comments about his job and his ambition weren't really about money. They were about revenge. And then, I get a formal invitation in the mail to my dad and Natalie's 2-year anniversary party. So I look at their social media and discover they've been planning this super expensive celebration for months. Catered food from that fancy new restaurant downtown, live music, expensive champagne, the works. Meanwhile, they're still living in my house, claiming they can't afford to move out yet. I checked property records, and they haven't made any effort to buy a place, despite my dad constantly saying they're still looking. So I've decided I'm going to this anniversary party, and I'm going to confront them both. Trevor offered to come with me for moral support, but I told him this is something I need to do alone, though now I'm wondering if that was the right call. I honestly don't know exactly what I'm going to say when I get there, but I know I need to stand up for myself and for Trevor. I'm nervous, but also weirdly calm. Like, I finally see the situation clearly. Edit, thanks for all the awards and support. I honestly didn't expect so many people to care about my family issues. 2. To answer everyone asking if Trevor knew Natalie was my stepmom when they dated, no, he didn't make the connection. They only dated for like 2 months. It was 5 years ago, and he knew her by her maiden name, Williams, not Jenkins. Also, the volleyball league was in the next town over, not where we currently live. When they met at that first family dinner, Trevor said she looked vaguely familiar, but couldn't place her. Natalie obviously recognized him immediately, which explains why she was so cold. Edit 3. For those suggesting I should just sell the house, it's complicated. My grandma left it to me because it was her family home for generations. She specifically wanted it to stay in the family. I've been letting them stay there for basically nothing. $800 per month for a 3-bead house, because I thought I was helping my dad out. I feel like such an idiot now. Edit 4. Several people have pointed out that my dad might have an alcohol problem that's been developing since he married Natalie. Looking back, there were some signs I missed. Like at Christmas, he had 3 glasses of wine when normally he'd just have one. And my brother mentioned Dad seemed buzzed at his birthday dinner back in February. I don't know if Natalie encourages his drinking or what, but it's definitely new behavior. Now for the second update. So it's been like 3 weeks since my last post, and so much has happened. I almost don't even know where to start. I guess first I should say thank you to everyone who commented with support and advice on my last post about the wedding disaster. Reading your comments honestly helped me feel less crazy about everything. For those who don't remember, my dad got totally drunk at my wedding, tried to physically confront my husband Trevor, and had to be dragged out by my brother and cousins. Then I found out my stepmom Natalie actually dated Trevor like 5 years ago and never told anyone, and was basically holding this weird grudge against him this whole time. Anyway, I decided to go to their anniversary party last weekend. I bought this black cocktail dress that was on sale, but still like twice what I'd normally spend on a dress. I don't know why that even mattered, but my brain was like, you need to look good when you confront them, or whatever. Trevor offered to come with me for moral support, but I said I needed to do this alone. Looking back, maybe that wasn't the smartest choice, but I was in this weird, determined headspace. I got there about 30 minutes after the party started. My hands were literally shaking so bad I could barely turn off my car. I kept telling myself I was totally fine and in control, but my body was like, nope. I sat in the car for another 10 minutes just trying to breathe normally. When I finally walked in, I was shocked. These people who have been telling me for a year and a half that they can't afford to move out of my house had somehow managed to throw a huge party. They had fancy food, an open bar, and servers with champagne, and there was Natalie in an expensive dress. My dad was telling people about some big contract his construction company just landed, which I know is not true because my uncle works in the same industry and told me Dad's company has been struggling. I quietly watched for a while. That's when I overheard Natalie talking to her friend about the gorgeous new kitchen renovation they were planning for their house. Their house. My house. The house my grandmother left to me. I wanted to scream right then, but somehow managed to keep it together. I kept telling myself to wait for the right moment. I seriously thought I was keeping it together pretty well, but my cousin Liz came up and asked if I was feeling sick because apparently I looked really pale. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and I felt like I was going to throw up. But in my head, I was like, I'm totally fine and in control. Denial is crazy, I guess. So then the toasts started. My dad thanked everyone for coming, and a couple of his friends said nice things about what a perfect couple they were. Then Dad asked if anyone else wanted to say something. I don't even remember raising my hand, but suddenly everyone was looking at me, and there was this weird silence. I started talking about family and loyalty. People were smiling, probably thinking I was making a nice speech about forgiving my dad for the wedding incident. Then I asked Natalie why she never mentioned dating Trevor. Everyone went silent. Natalie's face went completely white. She started saying she didn't know what I was talking about. My dad looked confused and asked Natalie what I was talking about. I showed them the pictures Michelle had sent me. Pictures of Trevor and Natalie together at some volleyball tournament from 5 years ago. I had them all ready on my phone. Natalie tried to say it wasn't serious enough to mention, but I told everyone how Trevor had ended things when he found out she was cheating with multiple guys, and how she'd been holding this grudge and turning my dad against Trevor this whole time. My dad looked really surprised. I could tell he had absolutely no idea about any of this. Natalie started getting really loud, saying I was making things up and trying to ruin their special day. That's when I pulled the envelope out of my purse. I gave my dad a formal eviction notice and told him they had 30 days to vacate my house. I announced to everyone that they were being evicted from my house while throwing parties like this. My dad said they needed more time and couldn't possibly find a place that quickly. I just said the notice was legally binding and my decision was final. Natalie screamed that I was ruining everything out of spite. I told her I learned about spite from experts and then walked out. When I got to my car, my phone was already blowing up with texts. My cousin Liz sent like 10 messages in a row saying I was her hero. My Aunt Carol said I made a scene and should be ashamed. My brother Cody just sent holy shit with like 1,000,000 exclamation points. I was so upset driving home that I missed my exit twice and ended up in some neighborhood I've never been in before. I had to use GPS to get back to a main road. The next morning, my dad showed up at my door looking like he hadn't slept. His eyes were all puffy and red, and his shirt was wrinkled, which is so not like him. He was apologetic but also defensive. He admitted he had no idea about Natalie's history with Trevor, but also kept saying I humiliated them in front of everyone and that was unnecessary. Then he told me they actually can't afford another place right now. Apparently Natalie has been racking up these massive credit card bills, explains the expensive clothes, and they're basically drowning in debt. He asked if we could work something out. I felt bad for a split second, but then I remembered how he refused to walk me down the aisle and got drunk and tried to attack my husband at our wedding. So I told him I'd extend the timeline to 60 days, but they still had to leave. He just nodded and left. He looked sad, which made me feel both satisfied and terrible at the same time. Is that weird? Anyway, they moved out after about 7 weeks. Of course, they couldn't make the 60-day deadline either. My mom's friend Barbara lives down the street from their new place and said it's this tiny apartment complex off Lancaster Road. Barbara also told me she saw my dad meeting with Jeff Goldstein, who's this divorce attorney her sister used last year. I'm trying not to feel happy about that, but yeah. When I went to clean out the house after they left, I found one of Natalie's earrings under the guest bathroom sink. It was this diamond thing that she was wearing the first time I met her. I sat there staring at it for like 20 minutes, trying to decide if I should mail it to her. I ended up throwing it in the trash. Is that petty? Probably. But it felt kind of good. My dad has been texting me a lot lately, mostly apologizing and saying he let Natalie cloud his judgment. He even sent this long handwritten letter about how he failed as a father and wants to make amends. I've been responding to his texts sometimes, but I told him I'm not ready to see him in person yet. I don't know when I will be, honestly. Trevor has been amazing through all of this. Like, he hasn't said I told you so, even once, even though he totally could. He's been helping me make plans for the house. We're thinking about renovating it before deciding whether to sell or rent it out properly. I'm not sure I could ever live there now with all these bad memories attached to it. I still feel weird about everything. Like, part of me feels justified and even proud that I stood up for myself. But another part feels sad about my relationship with my dad. He's the one who chose his wife over me. But it still hurts. Edit. So many people are asking about my dress comment. Yes, I wore black to their anniversary party intentionally. And yes, I bought a nice one because somehow in my stress brain, I thought looking good would make my confrontation more powerful or whatever. Brains are weird during stress, I guess. Edit 2. To the person who asked if I'm worried about them contesting the eviction, nope. The house is 100% in my name. They had no formal lease, and my lawyer assured me everything was done properly. Also, they're out now, so it's kind of a moot point. Edit 3. Several people asked about what happened with the house renovations my dad and Natalie were planning. Apparently, they had already contacted contractors and even paid deposits. Using what money? I called and canceled everything. One of the contractors was actually really nice and refunded the deposit directly to me since the house is in my name.